This is Maharajas of Scale, a podcast where we go behind the scenes and talk to founders who are demolishing the myths around building and scaling a big business in India. These are the stories that have shattered the assumptions around Indian consumers and are changing the game completely. I am Krishna, serial entrepreneur, co-founder of Flit, the fashion locator in town, and startup mentor, bringing you these stories. Hey listeners, this is Krishna from Maharajas of Scale. Today we have very young CTO of social commerce startup. We will let you in on the name in a moment. Somebody who's 30 and under 30. When you meet him or when you see him, you can't make out he's making all of this awesome stuff possible. Let's welcome Sanjeev Barnwal of Meesho to the show. Sanjeev, welcome.
Thanks, Krishna, and hello everyone. Super excited to be here and share our stories. Hoping you would get a lot of things out of this and probably apply in some form or format which will help you to scale your startups faster.
Terrific, Sanjeev. So Sanjeev, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on right now.
Yep. So I was born and brought up in a small town in Jharkand. After that, so I went to IIT Delhi, and that is where I met my co-founder with it. Yeah, so I think we were in fact in the same hostel, same department, good friends. So after that, I was with Sony in Japan for 3 years. So I went to the tech side. With it, went into a non-tech side. And in 2015, we kind of just had a conversation and we thought of starting up. So yeah, and then we are here scaling Meesho. If you want, I can get into details of what Meesho does.
We'll get into that in a second. So going back to those times when you guys were together at IIT, was it one of those things that we see in some movies? You go get good at tech, I get good at business, we'll come back and start something together?
So to be very open, none of us knew that we will kind of build something of our own ever. We never had that idea, right? This is like 2012. When starting up was not that cool thing to do. I know Flipkart was there, Flipkart was scaling up, but again, that startup culture was not there, I think. And also around us in college, I don't think anyone did startup at that point in time. A lot of people did after a few years, but yes, to be very open, yes, we never knew we were going to start up. It just happened.
Interesting. So what about the IIT journey? Coming in from Jharkand, was it something that you always wanted to do, or was it some source of inspiration from some other place, or is it one of those मैं IIT करूँगा और बाद में life set हो जाएगी?
Interesting. Yes. I think to some extent, and again, to be very open, when you're coming from a small town, right? Your parents, people around you have like few things in mind, right? You like clear your board exams, you get into a very good college, you either choose engineering or medical, and then your life will be settled. This is what people tell you, right?
Right.
Which to some extent, you do realize after a few years that there's no kind of saturation level. You'll keep growing whenever you want, right? So yes, I think journey has been super exciting. So after I got into college, I think I had almost same feeling कि अब तो ठीक है, like I've gotten into IIT, will probably get a good job and settle down. In the sense, I'll just get a good job, good paying job, where I do get to work on some interesting projects, maybe not always. And that is why I just, after college, I went to Japan, assuming, okay, it's a different culture. So it is going to be much more interesting. And it was to some extent. So yes, I think our thinking has changed over time. But yes, at every stage, you do have the same feeling, okay, just cross this next bar and then you're done. Maybe you'll just settle down, which has now changed, right? After starting up, you just start thinking big. You start enjoying to solve like difficult problems, which has like scalable impact and so on. But to be frank, in college, we didn't have such plans.
So was Sony a campus placement, or how did you end up at Sony?
Yeah, so Sony comes to IIT Delhi in the as part of the training and placement. So yes, got selected into that.
Okay, it must have been pretty exciting thinking of working in Sony Japan. What was that phase like?
Oh yeah, definitely. So because Sony is an interesting company, right? So even if you go back and look at history of Sony, like maybe 10 years behind Sony has brought a lot of innovation into hardware. So in fact, if I remember, like when I was a child, like Sony Walkman used to be very popular. It was kind of great innovation then from Sony. So Sony is a good company, and that was the image always, and it was definitely super interesting there. So, but the thing is, in Japan, at least in Sony, and that is what happens in most of the companies, with most of the companies which come for placement from Japan. The working language is Japanese. So you have to read and write Japanese to some extent. At least you have to know basic Japanese to just do basic stuff, right? You have to kind of write mails in Japanese or whatever. So before taking us to Japan, like they have this 3 months course where they teach you basic Japanese, and that is where your journey starts. But yes, after that, it is an ongoing journey, right? It's very different culture. So like people are super punctual, taking super high ownership of their work, like probably one of the best planners in the world, right? So, and I think I got to work on like cybershot cameras and their DSLR and cybershot cameras. So basically in 2014, the premium lineup that they released, I contributed to their application layer, and then I contributed to kind of driver layer and hardware abstraction layer of Sony mobiles, which is the Xperia premium lineup, which was released in 2014, I think, 15. But yes, the experience in Japan is kind of unique. Definitely such an organized way of living. You rarely get to experience that.
So aside from the Japanese culture, did Sony have a different culture of its own that stood out distinctly?
So I think it's very difficult for me to draw parallels because I think Sony is the only big company where I have worked, right? So, but even then, some of the things that definitely stood out was not in terms of culture per se, but their tech, specifically their camera tech, is super amazing. Like they have done a lot of things and on DSLR and cybershot, and when they had released these Xperia phones, they used to have like kind of best camera in the world. And all of that was possible because, and again, for this whatever, like 40-50-year-old company to kind of release new products and collaborate in this great way. So they're trying to port like the camera tech from DSLR and cybershot to Xperia phones. Now, all of this collaboration was kind of seamless, and that was something which I still remember to this day, that for such a big company moving so fast, changing directions was kind of amazing.
Interesting. I have exposure to Sony as well, but I've worked with Sony in the US. It was part of my portfolio of accounts that I used to oversee while at Wipro. So Sony's US headquarters, which is in San Diego, I've been there for several months. Had an opportunity to see many of these products from close quarters. But the research and the development side of it a lot of it is actually out of Japan. So not necessarily out of the US. Without digressing too much into the Sony story, it is interesting, isn't it, that they made the Olympus acquisition, and then after that, they've leveraged and doubled down on the research. And if you see the latest Xperia Mark II and even OnePlus, all of the newer cameras are all Sony lenses, right?
I think they've always excelled on imaging sensors. Even Apple used to use their sensors. And there was a different division, very, very super like critical and amazing division, which used to churn out perfect image sensors then. So yeah, I think doing hardware and software both, at least seeing hardware develop around you, is a completely different experience from software only. So you can, even basic things like you don't have enough room to make mistakes in hardware, because if you do mess it up, you're going to burn a lot of money just to correct it because it has already started in the production. So yes, it is a challenging job, definitely.
Right. Steve Jobs used to tout this as one of Apple's strengths, right? That the company makes both hardware and software, and because they write software that works so well with hardware, their code is so much more superior. Did you get that feeling when you were working with the Sony on the Sony cameras?
Oh, definitely. I think so in the entire tech stack, so right from driver layer to application layer. So of course the core tech that they have, that has like good to go, right? So it's amazing, super performant code. In fact, it's a real-time operating system based tech stack of camera, which does amazing job. So definitely great tech, even on the software side for cameras, which is what I've seen.
So then what happened? You were there. Was it operating in a dominant culture as the Japanese is, pretty challenging, right? There are numbers to speak. We don't have a lot of Indians. Was there? What prompted you? What prompted you from Sony to do something else or venture out?
Yeah. So no, it was not surprisingly, right? So you do expect Japanese to be traditionally. It's an old company. So, but surprisingly, they're very open to changing, right? And I think I was the only Indian in there. This entire 50, 60 member team. This big group. They did hire a lot of Indians in 2012, but they were distributed into different teams, different offices as part of this headquarters. But yeah, so coming back to the way they were running their teams, it was pretty open, and it was super exciting for me as well. In fact, like in 2013 or so, I was working on DSLR and cybershot. Then I moved to Sony camera, to Xperia phones, and that again changed everything, right? So again, I had to learn a lot of things. So learning wise, it was like going great. In fact, a lot of these things was new to me, and it just kept on coming, and it was kind of exciting to see something you build getting released out to masses. So work wise per se, it's not that I was not happy. In fact, I was kind of enjoying it really well, but there's this interesting thing which changed everything. So I was there in Japan, and then some company from Bangalore reached out to me saying, would you like to join us? And they wanted me to solve one of their specific tech problems, which is not related to camera. I had some certain hobby projects which I was doing, so very similar to that. So I was in Japan. I didn't know what was happening in Bangalore, at least not to the details. So at a high level, like your startup ecosystem is evolving a lot. You have like a lot of opportunities coming up. But yes, so there was this startup which approached me, and Vidit was in Bangalore then. He was working in InMobi. So I just called him up, and this was like we are always connected on. You see, right? So after college, you have like these WhatsApp groups where you are all connected, same wing, same hostel. But we never had a formal call, as in never to discuss. So even though we were good friends, we were always connected on chat. But so I just called him, like this is 2015 early, I think April or so. So I just called him asking, so there's this startup which sounds exciting. What do you think? Should I join? What is the startup scene there? And then he just quickly kind of said that why are you going to join? Let's just start up together. And in that call itself, things change, right? So basically, when you have a friend, like a very close friend with whom you are very comfortable in working, like we have done a lot of projects together in college, so you know that dynamics works. So it was a very easy decision then, and it was a very quick and easy decision. It was kind of like, theek hai, like this is my very good friend who wants to start up, and we have these complementary skill sets as well, right? I went in the tech side, he went in the non-tech side, and we kind of come up together. We can build super amazing products. So it just happened, and after 1 month, I think I had resigned, and I just came back to Bangalore, and he had also resigned. He had plans of doing MBA, so he also resigned, and then we just started up. So all of this happened in a very small time, like probably in a month or so, everything changed.
That's a big leap of faith, isn't it? Working for Sony in Japan, and then you decide to leave and start up. That must have taken, what was it? Was it the opportunity that beckoned, or the fact that it was going to be a new form of old times, two friends working on something exciting? How did you go about that decision?
Right. So I think first thing was, so when I was kind of considering that offer from a startup, probably somewhere in my mind, I was already thinking that, okay, maybe startup ecosystem is evolving a lot. Why not build something of your own? Because you always enjoy, I was enjoying my work there, but you always enjoy more when you try to solve a very big problem, and that is a business that you are building, right? So that kind of gives a very different excitement and very different satisfaction. Obviously, you have very big dreams that you'll solve a bigger problem, and then probably that is going to impact a lot of people. So I think one was definitely that to kind of, if you want to start something, the time is now, because and it's not that people don't start later in life, but it just becomes too difficult. You have a lot of other responsibilities. And at that point in time, we were young, I'm still young. So we just didn't have a lot of responsibilities. So we just thought, okay, this is the time. If not now, then probably it's going to be now or never. And I think this thought of starting up with a very good friend was kind of comforting, right? Because I know you're going to take risk, but probably you'd end up doing the best you can. I don't think there is a better combination possible, at least for me, for us beyond that. So I think both these two things made it easier for us to decide, and we just jumped on it.
So when you did make that move, did you both have a specific idea in mind that you were going to work on, or it was like, let's just get together and then start hashing some ideas and then we can decide what to start?
Right. Again, to be transparent, we did not have an idea in mind. We just wanted to solve a problem at scale. These two things we were pretty clear about. Now, when we started thinking about ideas, generally, so you talk to people around you, you talk to other startup founders, you read generally blogs. General idea is that you should try to solve a problem which you think is a problem for yourself, because when you do that, you actually kind of end up being even more excited, maybe have better insights, and get to the solution faster. We were very open to not going specifically in that direction. We were very open to exploring all the ideas possible. And again, to be transparent, we chose Hyper. So basically the first business that we launched, which was called Fashioneer then. Fashioneer stands for Fashion Nearby, which was we now call hyperlocal for fashion, very similar to Swiggy for fashion you can think of.
Right.
We thought, okay, people want, general idea is that you should solve your own problem. So we just figured out, okay, we don't like to go out shopping, and hyperlocal is getting super funded, right? So it was hyperlocal was hot then, 2015.
Right.
So we thought nobody's focusing at fashion for hyperlocal in a hyperlocal scenario. So we'll just launch that. And there is a problem, which is people don't want to step out. At least we didn't want to step out for buying something, maybe trying at home, we'll give that. So we started with that. And very soon, like in 2-3 months, we realized, okay, this is not working. I think in fashion, selection has much more importance than kind of delivery, right? So you need to have kind of infinite or at least a very big selection, which kind of is almost impossible in a hyperlocal setup. You get constrained there.
So what made you think that this was not working? What did you launch? What did you not get as feedback that made you think that this isn't working?
Yep. So I think specifically we launched an Android app. I think it took us about a month. And we started from this Koramangala in HSR in Bangalore. And we mapped, so there are a lot of these offline multi-brand shop outlets, right? So smaller stores, brand plus unbranded, whatever. And we just mapped these stores in the app, and then users of this app had option of trying before buying as a service. So if a user places an order, we had a delivery boy, but most of the time we had to run around and we'll kind of do this delivery as well. So, and this is a very different experience, right? You're just coding in Sony, and then one day you have you release this app, and now you have to you have to do delivery yourself because your delivery boy is not coming today. He's taken off. So that is these are exciting times, right? And then even before that, you have to go to these shops to click pictures of their collection.
Right.
So we have a Sony camera, which I used to take everywhere, and me and with it, we used to do editing and then kind of do all the uploads at night. But yes, so it started like our friends were using it, but then it went scale, and whenever we used to go back to our users, we asked them what happened, why not ordering. So I think it was same thing, which is I'm like looking for this kind of stuff which is not there on your platform. So that is when we realized so this has a clear constraint in scaling. But a good thing was, at that point in time, whatever stores we were working with during that time. So we used to talk to them, and our pitch was, we'll take you online. So we'll take these small stores online. And they used to say, we are already online. So then you just ask them how. So they would say, so these store owners used to be connected with their customers on WhatsApp groups. This is then in 2015. Nobody knew about it. We also didn't know about it. So, but with this, we got introduced to this commerce happening on social media, specifically WhatsApp. So what these store owners used to do was, whenever they got new assortment, they would just take pictures and share it with whoever used to come on their store. They would take their numbers and then add them to a group. So every new assortment used to get, they used to click pictures and send it to their customers. And that is when we understood, okay, so these guys are now trying to sell it in their network. We also discovered few shopping groups in Facebook dedicated to buying and selling. So we thought, why not? And then this was a clear problem which we felt because you understand buying on WhatsApp is, I think there are a lot of problems, right? You have to kind of order management, payment collection. So whatever, like Shopify solves this problem, right? For store owners, where it provides a platform, a landing page, payment collection, a lot of other things. So we thought, why not build an Indian version of Shopify for mobile, specifically for selling on social media? And that is what we did. So we kind of built this again. So we changed our model. This was again end of 2015 roughly. If I remember correctly, it was November. So we launched this Meesho, which we now call Meesho 1.0. So we launched this and we started going to these guys to onboard them. We went to a lot of exhibitions as well where these handicrafts and all those kind of products were there, and we used to onboard these store owners. So we built this. This was scaling and this was working well. And then we went to Y Combinator with this in 2016. After Y Combinator, we raised a small angel round as well, and then came back. So this is like 2016 mid-year, right? About whatever, August, September. It's delayed. So now we have a business which is Meesho 1.0, which is working, which is scaling.
So when you say scale, what sort of numbers were you seeing? What sort of customer adoption were you seeing that was giving you that feeling that yes, this is clicking, this is scaling?
Yeah, so absolute numbers I don't think I remember, but growth I do have a sense. Roughly, I think during YC, if I remember correctly, we were growing about I think 50% or 50, somewhere between 50 to 100% month on month in terms of number of orders.
Any ballpark users or orders back then?
I think roughly we would be doing about probably around 4,000-5,000 orders per day or so.
Okay.
But again, I don't remember exactly. It's difficult to kind of go. But yes, so broadly it was working. It was not scaling very quickly, but probably around 50% month on month type number, I definitely. And roughly the number was about 3,000-4,000 orders per day.
Okay.
But so the problem again was that the retention was not as expected. So that was one problem. And I'll come to how did we figure out the core problem. And second, it was a free tool, right? So it was more like you just come create your online shop. So if you get your own subdomain like ABC's boutique or whatever, and then you can upload your product, sell to your customers. But it's a free tool, right? We didn't know how to make money on it. So there are two problems, right? Retention was not as expected, and then it's a free tool. How do you make money? And then when we used to go back to, so it has always been kind of strength, at least this is what we feel of this entire Meesho team and us, is that we are very user focused. And with this, I specifically mean we keep talking to our users, because this is not a problem which we face. We are trying to solve a problem which someone else is facing. So we are not these social store owners, right? So the only way to solve the right problems and in the right way is to be very close to your users if you're not solving problem for yourself. Right? And that is what we always did. Like in the first one, right? In Fashion Year, we wanted to understand, okay, these small store owners, they maybe need a shop. They maybe need an online presence, so we built for them. And then when we used to kind of go back to these users to understand what happened, we realized most of these were not these offline stores. Our Meesho users, Meesho 1.0 users were mostly housewives who were using this tool to run their online boutique. And these guys, most of these housewives were kind of had their own supplier connections on WhatsApp, like super aspirational entrepreneurs who used to kind of put in a lot of effort to find suppliers in these major manufacturing hubs and then get connected with them on WhatsApp and start selling using this online tool. And when we used to kind of go to them and understand what is happening, why is your business not growing, why did you stop selling, or why are your orders decreasing? Everyone had the same problem, which is, so in this impulse buying e-commerce, right? So social commerce is more about impulse buying than intent-based buying. So this impulse buying, you need a constant supply of fresh products. And building these supplier connections on a constant basis for these housewives and building this whole, or at least figuring out, sending these orders on WhatsApp, getting them to dispatch in time, getting the right price, getting the right variety is very difficult for them. And we used to talk to a lot of these users, and they said, okay, supply is a problem. That is the clear bottleneck on why we are not growing. So this time what we did was kind of, we know this product 1.0 is running, but we want to try out, okay, this is a bigger problem it seems. So we just ran everything on WhatsApp. We did a pilot on WhatsApp. This time we didn't build a product because one of the products was working properly, but we had an idea which we wanted to try it out. And the best way to try it out is, and again, this is a problem which you're trying to validate, right? Is this actually a problem or not? This is a hypothesis that you're trying to validate. So we ran it on WhatsApp. So we had like a bunch of people, including a lot of our team members, and sometimes me as well, trying to kind of get few products from suppliers and then share it with these users of Meesho 1.0, right? So, and when we started doing that, we realized, okay, this is scaling really well. So then we created a separate team for the second model, we call it Meesho Supply because it was more focused on the entire supply chain side of things.
Let's just dive deep a little bit. So you saw these store owners or even some women who were really entrepreneurial build a WhatsApp group, take these pictures. So when you launched the first product was a web store that would allow them just to upload these pictures and accept orders and accept payments as well. So which means you provided the online presence, the payments, logistics, everything else was still their own lookout.
So we did provide a way to collect payments.
Okay.
We had integrated. Logistics was taken care of by them, but we provided a platform. And the long-term vision was that maybe logistics can be provided as a service then. But they could, for example, dispatch themselves and upload the tracking number, and we'll send and we'll inform the end customer that, okay, your product is dispatched. Maybe show a tracking page or something.
And then when you were sharing these pictures, what exactly was the newer product that you tried out or you were trying?
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
So that was Meesho 1.0. And then you met with some of these resellers or people who had these stores. And when you saw plateauing order curve or some sort of a dip in order curve, you realized that you had to look at the supply side as well. So in Meesho 1.0, the supply was all being driven by all these people that had these web stores, right? So what did you add on top of it? So what was the WhatsApp-based thing that you tried at that point in time? Can you dive a little deeper?
So yes, so the problem we are solving then was how do we give them more products to sell to their customers, right? So we started contacting few suppliers again in these manufacturing hubs. And then we used to get product pictures from them, collect product pictures from them, and then broadcast it on these WhatsApp to these individual resellers using this WhatsApp broadcast feature, I think. So on a daily basis, we used to send like a bunch of catalogs, a bunch of products to these resellers, which they then go on and share it with their end buyers and get orders. And when they used to get an order, they would come back to us saying, I want to place an order. This is the address. Again, the drop shipping model. We used to go back to the supplier and ask them to dispatch it directly to the end customer.
WhatsApp didn't have any of those back then, right? So you built some sort of a hack to do the broadcast to their groups back then?
So yes, I think you're right. We did build a UI level hack to... So basically, this entire... How does the process of forwarding look like?
Right.
So you select time and then you probably select 100 contacts and then you forward to everyone, right? So we automated this selection of 100. This is the most time-taking thing, right? So we automated this, did some kind of scripting there to, again, UI level scripting to auto-select these and probably distribute. So let's say I'm targeting like 5,000 or let's say 1,000 resellers and I have like 10 phones. So I distribute it on the back end and each of these will get 100 and then it will get selected automatically. And then someone has to just press send.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Go on.
Yeah. So, and then we also opened office in Surat because we had to manage the dispatching side, right? Because, so most of our suppliers during that time were from Surat. So we opened a small office in Surat. We got products from them and we used to dispatch. So this is how this started. And this is, I'm talking about roughly 2017, January or so. And then we saw, okay, this is working. Maybe we should build an app as well for this, because this seems to be taking off really well. So then we built an app as well for this. So that point in time, we had two apps running, which is one Meesho and second Meesho Supply. So this Meesho Supply is the current app which we have, we have now rebranded to Meesho. So we ran this for about 6 months and it was a crazy growth, probably doubling every month. So, and that is when I think in August or so, we raised a Series A led by SAF partners, great investors. And so then...
And what were your numbers, rough numbers at that point in time, users, adoption, when you did the Series A?
Yeah, I think it is. I don't think I can share that now. But yes, I think because it was doubling, probably few thousands per day.
Any numbers that you can share that will speak to that?
Yeah, right. So I can share you the facts. So currently we have about around 4 million monthly active resellers using Meesho to do their business.
Okay.
So I think at that point in time, probably most of the startups have roughly like few thousands per day. So,
okay.
Roughly in that range. So yes, and after this Series A, we had to take a decision, right? Because now we have 2 products, and because you're always constrained on resources, you have to do the right prioritization, right? So you have like one product just taking off very quickly, and just cannot focus on 2 products at the same time. So when we had to shut down this Meesho 1.0, because there was a clear sign that okay, this 2.0 Meesho supply can become a very big business. You can make money here, and this is going to be very big. And then you align your team, like we aligned everyone, make them understand why this is the right decision. And of course, it's a difficult decision, right? Your team has invested so much bandwidth in powering this Meesho 1.0, and now you ask them to, oh no, you have to now change it again. So, but yes, over time, I think everyone was aligned, and in hindsight, it was of course a perfect decision.
Interesting. So the fashion vertical or segment in India is riddled with, it's literally like a graveyard of startups, right? Because when you think of it, fashion and food, they are the top, needs, primal needs. And under Roti, Kapda, Makaan, obviously Roti and Kapda. And then, so if we look at all the famous names out there from housing.com, which did the Makaan part, and then Myntra and all of those, and then Swiggy. So you cover the trinity of basic needs, right? And then the thing is, all these 3 sectors or segments right now are riddled with literally graveyards of both startups as well as, many a high net worth individual has possibly lost some money. But it's interesting. What I find really fascinating is what you guys have done with it. 2015 was, I think, sort of like almost the end of the hyperlocal wave had almost set in, right? And the funny thing is the hyperlocal has never gained notoriety since then. A lot of other sectors have come back up, but hyperlocal, and although we've seen Flipkart's recent delivery and then Dunzo, all of them sort of start butting heads with each other, and looks like all of them are now going at the same market and the same use case. But the fashion related one, if I remember correctly, Sujayat Ali's startup, I forget, Woonik, which also started with a similar hypothesis, and Woonik ceased to exist. I think it still exists as a brand. So, and Woonik was pretty well funded. At one point in time, I remember meeting Sujayat once, and he was telling me we are on track to become the 2nd largest fashion commerce portal in the country. And today, Woonik doesn't exist, or maybe it does exist. But you guys have made a success out of it. You've grown. And is this by accident, or do you follow some formula or some sort of a method where you're saying, hey, we put this out there, we're not getting feedback, let's go see how we can find something working here?
Yep, sure. I think so. I'll just give you a few anecdotes and also few major decisions that we took in our journey. So one thing which hasn't changed since the beginning is, again, user focus. So you can only build the right things and build the right solutions if you talk to your users. Just stop imagining problems. Of course, data will help you to some extent once you have reached a certain scale. But just try to build hypotheses on data, but definitely talk to users to validate those hypotheses instead of going ahead and jumping to the solution directly, or at least jumping to the problem. Is that a real problem that you're trying to solve? And this is how always happened in our journey, right? I'll give you some examples. So even both these pivots were in a lot of ways inspired or triggered by conversations from these users, right? So the way we have always grown is we keep solving hard problems every few months. And the source of these hard problems is again users. So for example, in the beginning, we were targeting only existing resellers. So even with this Meesho supply, which is Meesho 2.0, our product was built in such a way that people who are already selling in their network can very easily come on board and start using this entire supply chain. Right? So, but after a few months, we realized again, so now we have a product which existing resellers can use. To take it to next level, we have to onboard new resellers. By new, I mean people who will start reselling with us for the first time. Again, source of this was, we were seeing few users who were coming to Meesho, but they were not scaling as expected. So when you talk to them, you understand, these guys are doing it for the first time. So you have to make them aware of what is reselling, how does it work, what are the best practices, and a bunch of other things. So then we customize our product and added features to support these new resellers as well. So that was again one great insight. And this is how it always works, right? Every few months you discover new insights and you double down on it. And even now, one internal metric that we track very closely is income per reseller. So how much income does a reseller make with Meesho? And that in a way signifies how your resellers are growing with you, because only if your resellers grow, you are going to grow, right? So to ensure kind of enable them to grow their income, we started expansion into newer categories. So we started with, for example, ethnic fashion, right? So ethnic was the category which was selling very well in social commerce at that point in time. We started with ethnic, but now we have almost everything, right? So everything in fashion, home and kitchen, and other things. So this insight was also driven from users, right? You ask them, how is it going? They'll tell you, okay, I'm selling like ethnic maybe, but my customers are asking for Western. Can you have Western? So all of these insights you can never have unless you, and in fact, we have this practice in the company as well, where we ask everyone to kind of do reseller calls once in a while to understand how is it going and to uncover new insights. And I would definitely recommend everyone to do that.
I totally agree with you. In fact, I wrote an article on our podcast site about building an MVP. And in an MVP, while building an MVP, having these conversations with users, especially if you're able to have an hour-long conversation with your potential user, throws up so many insights. It's unbelievable. Because what happens is, historically, when you go to all of these pitching events or investors, now that, startups have become sort of a household topic to talk about. When I go to pitching events, I hear a lot of people, investors, potential entrepreneurs, just repeating the same question again and again, right? What problem does it solve? Or, what is the user going to use it for? Stuff like that. If we had to distill that, it comes down to this age-old example that's been given. When you're selling a drill to, that is capable of drilling, 6-inch holes, the question is, are you buying the hole or are you buying the drill, right? And Clayton Christensen, who is this Harvard professor who pioneered this whole idea of disruption, posed this question. There's another gentleman who actually went a step further and said, what if they're not buying both? They're neither buying the hole nor the drill. They're actually buying place for their picture frames, for instance. And the funny thing is 3M, which is very well known for its innovation, asked these questions. What exactly are they using the drill for? And then they've created products that do not even drill a hole into the wall. Just to give a metaphor, talking to users, what it can do for you, it can uncover those actual endpoints that the users are trying to get at, which enriches your own product creation journey, right? So you keep talking about the user part. So then is it right to assume then the very initial user, which was at the very beginning, were people like you, right? So the fashioneer was born or created for people like you. But when you started seeing that it wasn't working and selection was more important, at that point in time, when you saw all of these retailers and store owners or other resellers create WhatsApp groups, your user actually shifted from the end consumer of fashion to the reseller, correct? So all the other innovations and all the other products that you've launched is based on these resellers.
Yes.
Interesting. That's a big leap, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think when you when you're trying to, so again, every pivot is a big leap, right? And specifically for us, pivot from 1.0 to 2.0 was a very big leap again, because you have something which is working and then you want to invest additional bandwidth in figuring out a newer problem which you think is going to get bigger is a leap of it, definitely. I think, and that is what we always feel, right? And all of this again ties back to the user conversations, because building things is easy. Being a techies love to build things. But given an option, I would just keep coding, I'd just keep building new things. That is easier, but building the right thing is very hard. Figuring out what to build and figuring out how to build it is extremely difficult.
So talk about the inflection points a bit. How did you, when you launched 1.0 and 2.0, what were some of those defining moments that gave you the feeling that, yeah, numbers are one thing? Obviously, you had 3,000, 4,000 orders back then, which you alluded to some time ago. But what were some of those inflection points where you got a feeling that, hey, this is going to go somewhere, this is going to, beyond numbers, what were those inflection points?
I think, yeah, so apart from numbers, few things, yes. So the first problem with the older business model was there was no way to make money, right? So, okay, here you are delivering something, you have this option of building a sustainable business model out of it. But again, more than that, I think what is more important was you're enabling your resellers to grow. And I think that is phenomenal, right? So imagine these resellers, most of these are housewives, right? So about 70% are housewives. And more than the income, so basically, of course, a lot of these housewives are kind of income that they make through Meesho is significant portion of their whole household income. So 80% of them are from below tier 1 cities, right? So the kind of money that they make is significant. And even more than that, this enables them to have some social recognition, a professional identity, which is much more empowering for them, which enables them to gain much more respect in the society. They can now say, I am a business owner, which is a great thing. And this is what we kept hearing from our conversations. So our users used to love us, right? Okay, you have my life because you have enabled me to do something which was never possible. So I think all these conversations kind of give you a sense that, okay, this thing is now working out well and your users love you. So it is going to take off, right? And you are seeing numbers, of course, to validate that. But I think conversations, again, it goes back to the conversations and that is when we understood, right? It is more about social recognition than numbers, than the income that they.
By how many folds has their own income capacity increased from the time you began?
Yeah, so I think, so that changes a lot for different types of users. So let's say my top 5 to 10% users currently make about 30 to 40,000 rupees per month. Average user makes about 10,000 to 15,000 per month. And all of these keeps changing, right? So a new user moves into this average category, learns reselling, does it right, follows all the nudges that we are giving, and then probably graduates to become a top reseller. So all of this changes a lot with at what stage of their reselling journey they are in. But yes, so this is how the kind of scale of the income that they make looks like with Meesho. Interesting.
And in all of this, talk about the relationship between you and Vidit. You are managing the tech side and Vidit is managing the business side. How do you both decide how to work, what to pick, what to choose, what to go after? Who takes the lead role? What sort of a process do you have there?
So again, all of this ties back to what I said earlier, which is I think having a complementary skill set amongst founders helps a lot, right? So I look everything tech, he looks everything non-tech. Same goes for the decision making as well, because he understands business really well. I understand tech in general, and that solves a lot of problems, right? He doesn't have to worry about building it the right way. I don't have to worry about the decision making because I know it is going to be right. So I think in all of this, the best thing which happened is, of course, starting with it, right? So having a founder whom you can trust, and so this entire startup journey is going to be with kind of extreme ups and downs, right? But one thing which never changes is having someone whom you can trust, and starting up with such a co-founder that kind of solves a lot of problems.
Yeah, true. So looking back, let's talk about decisions. What were some decisions that went right, and what were some decisions that didn't go right or went wrong?
Right. So again, in the pivot itself, figuring out, uncovering that insight and pivoting at the right time, changing business models, adding new types of features at the right point in time. I think those were the best decisions, right? And that is why we have managed to grow this quickly, kind of one of the fastest growing startups. I think few learnings from this, not per se decisions, but because again, startup is it's an ongoing journey, right? You keep making mistakes, you keep learning from them, and then you try to improve, you try to iterate. I think in the first time itself, when we launched Fashioneer, a lot of that was motivated by kind of hyperlocal is getting funded, and this is beginning kind of mid 2015 when hyperlocal was still getting funded. So hyperlocal is getting funded, maybe build something, talk to VCs to figure out, okay, what is the next big thing which is going to get funded, and then try to build it, right? And we used to then build it and go back to VC saying, okay, we have built this. They'll just kind of tell you that, okay, it's nice, but then let's look, you have to kind of build these, and then let's have a conversation. We used to do that maybe once or twice, and then you realize, okay, so you have to figure out what is the right thing, and you have to believe in your business model. It's not going to be VCs, it's not going to be your friends. It's always going to be you who can figure out the right thing for you. So I think that was one learning, definitely. Second was, I think, so in a hyper growth stage, the way we have seen like in past 1 or 2 years, building the right team is very important, and specifically getting the right culture fit. In the beginning, at least trying to define the right culture, and culture is not something you define, you try to derive it from your existing folks. So you try to derive and just putting it out there, and maybe using it as a filter for your next hiring helps a lot in smoothing things out, right? Because when you are scaling very quickly, one thing which is very important is communication, and all of that, and expectation setting, and all of this becomes easier if you have the right culture fit. So probably defining those early in the stage helps a lot. From the tech side, I think a lot of learnings. I think balancing, and I think this is a typical problem which every startup faces, right? You have to balance between growth, which is building new things, which prioritizes growth, versus clearing out your tech debt, right? So refactoring, re-architecting, whatever. And finding the right balance is very difficult, and probably in some ways trying to predict like 6 months down the line, okay, you're going to reach at this stage. And having that clear view, okay, these are your systems, maybe few of these are not going to scale, so probably you have to revisit it and maybe prioritize that as opposed to do it when it is required. So probably taking that decision, it is very hard. There's no formula there, right? It's very subjective, depends on what is the need of the hour. So having those things clear in your mind helps a lot in running this thing.
Interesting. On the YC angle, how easy or tough was to get into Y Combinator, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, so I think one good thing about applying to YC, even without applying to YC, is the kind of questions that you have to fill. It forces you to think a lot about your business. Maybe in some cases you wouldn't have thought about it. So I think that application process itself is quite overwhelming. You go deeper into what you're trying to do, at least try to articulate it out. But yes, getting into YC, yes, and of course we're lucky enough to get into YC, and experience was amazing. Like so in YC what happens is you're divided into smaller groups, right? So during our time we had about, I think, 105 companies. We went to YC in 2016 summer, yeah. So there were about 105 companies in our batch. So we are divided into smaller groups. I don't remember the exact number, probably somewhere between about 15, I guess. And then each group has 2 partners assigned. And it's very open. You just go out there and discuss problems with other founders. You just see them facing similar problems, and they're at a similar stage, right? So generally trying to brainstorm. I think that is a clear value add, right? You just surrounded by such an amazing set of founders. You get to learn a lot. Even beyond that, they have like super interesting and very helpful conversations on different topics about running startups, building startups, how to handle scale, how to hire right. And then they also call like a few seasoned entrepreneurs to share their journey. I think those learnings are kind of very helpful. So Yeah, and after demo day, you get to kind of pitch so many investors at the same time. Saves a lot of trouble. Yeah, saves a lot of time in raising the money.
Any lessons from YC that you took? Obviously, there are the usual suspects: hire the right team and think about product adoption in terms of data, the ones that are widely known. Any smaller ones that are not known that sort of stuck with you, that helped you in the eventual journey?
Yep. So this users, talking to your users is enforced a lot. I think so. I remember there's a T-shirt which YC gives you, and it's written, "They build something people want." And they teach you a lot of minor details about how to talk to users, and then they focus a lot on talking to users. Probably they would enforce what were the insights, tell me when did you do the user calls and stuff like that. So, and that is very helpful. That kind of enforces you to, and we were already doing that, but also doing it in the right way is important. Trying to, for example, not ask leading questions. Let's say if I'm going to ask them, so a clear example would be in this case, where we figured out, Meesho 2.0 is required, is actually solving a problem. I wouldn't go and ask them whether supply is a problem for them, right? I would ask them why their business is not scaling. And there could be n number of reasons, right? It's just that they are starting up. It's just that they don't have time right now. There could be n number of reasons. So not asking those leading questions are very important. And I think there are a bunch of such minor learnings, which on aggregate level adds a lot of value.
Right. Looking back, are there some things that you would have done differently?
I think I've already answered this, so probably it goes back to fashion here. Don't always try to solve your problem. Figure out what is the right problem. Yes, that is definitely a learning. Yeah, so I think one thing I can definitely highlight. So when your team is exploding, like specifically in tech team, we grew from like 20 to 100 in about 1.5 years. That was like hyperscaling. So, and one thing which creates a lot of problem is communication. Your communication breaks down if you're not trying to solve it proactively. Because you expect like it's 20 people team, it's a smaller team, people know what is happening, what are the projects going on. But the moment you scale it to 100, it's very difficult. People just don't know what is happening. It becomes a chaos. I think I would have set up better processes, better communication, or at least have that clear view of which process needs to be introduced when, more towards solving the communication problem. Because when you hire smart guys, just throw problems at them, they'll definitely solve it. But then they need context, and that context can only come if you are communicating it in the right way. What are the priorities of the company? Where do you fit in? What is your team trying to solve? And it's a hyper-growing startup, right? Every month you're solving different problems. So probably giving that view and giving them a clear picture of what other people are working on and how do they fit into this entire puzzle, that becomes super important. So one thing definitely, I'd focus a lot more on communication during hyper-growth stage.
So for a startup that is scaled as much as you guys have, one of the things that keeps coming at you is all the various newer ideas and the newer ways in which you could and the directions that you could take, right? Because the vantage point is different, the resource set that you have is vastly different now. So what's in store? What are some things that are a bit different? One thing is data that reinforces the hypothesis that you're already working on or the products that are already out there. And from 2015 till 2020, I think we have seen 3 significant events in Indian history: demonetization, GST, and the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. What sort of insights have these thrown coming from the kind of business? Because what you are in, resellers, they are in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 towns. That should be giving you some insight and also throwing up a lot of opportunities.
Yep, sure. So think with this. So one, I'd say there were 2 macro trends which have definitely impacted our business, and maybe some of these happened before us. So when Jio was launched, right? So Jio brought a lot of people online in below tier 1 cities, and like 70% of our user base, right, are roughly about 80% are from below tier 1 cities. Now, all of this is possible only because they are actively using WhatsApp. And probably if you ask them what are your 2 top apps that you use, it will be WhatsApp and Facebook. And all of this is possible because Jio was there. And second is definitely UPI has enabled them to collect payments very easily, right? So they can always sell it to their customers. But collecting payments was not as smooth. I think when we started, a lot was on the bank transfer side. But definitely now we see a lot of people using UPI to collect payments. Our resellers collecting payments from and customers. So I think, and now, in fact, post-COVID, we are seeing even better traction. Probably because now more than ever, people are trying to figure out how can they make money by sitting at home, maybe kind of alternate sources of income because the primary source has taken a hit. So I think now more than ever, it is more important for us to support them, and that is what we are seeing. We are doing kind of to build everything we can to enable a new enable a user to become a reseller, like enable a new joiner to become a reseller and build and grow business with us.
Interesting. So this is fantastic. Your journey from Jharkand to Japan and then to Meesho, it's pretty fascinating. Looks like you have a very focused approach about what you look for, what you listen to, and what sort of products you build. And looks like you have a terrific understanding between you and Vidit as well. It comes across when you talk about how you both manage your own responsibilities. So what's in store with the next 5 years?
So of course, a lot of things will change. We might figure out a new audience. We might figure out a new category. We might figure out a new business as well. But I think one thing which is definitely not going to change is our user focus, the centric approach to solving all the problems, because that is what has taken us. That is what has helped us kind of scale until now. So very difficult to comment on that, but definitely we'll keep focusing on our users and keep growing. 5 years is a long time.
Interesting. Any words of wisdom for potential entrepreneurs, would-be entrepreneurs, and current entrepreneurs that are listening to this podcast?
Yeah, definitely. I think one kind of idea or one thought which is very close to me is, and which we have all, of course, learned in our journey is, again, don't stick to an idea. Just maybe pick a vertical, but just don't love your idea. Just love problem solving. At least that is what has always helped us. If you try to keep focusing on a very specific problem, if you try to not have a broader view on what is happening out there, it becomes very difficult, because what you are holding close to your heart might not be a big enough problem to solve. So just keep looking out and just love problem solving rather than solving a specific problem. Yeah.
I think that's fantastic advice, because I've seen that many times. The problem or the idea that we imagine in our mind is actually just a tiny speck of the larger possibilities around that idea that can actually happen, right? So Sean Ellis, when he talks about the Dropbox scale story, for instance, if we were to go back to your own, the wording on the t-shirt that says in YC that says build what people want, right? And then build something that people want. And Sean Ellis talks about this Dropbox story. It is part of folklore that Dropbox created this slide deck and put it out on Hacker News way back then. And then, if I remember correctly, they had 200,000 people that said they wanted that stuff. But if you read Sean Ellis's own detailed story about the later on journey, the post 6 months, Sean says there were no Google search terms for this. There was nothing where people said, I want an online file storage service, right? But, and they initially experiment with that. The funny thing is they do a very tiny, what I wouldn't call it a hack, but some sort of a tiny change in the wording. They position it as a online file sharing service as opposed to a file storage service. And then usage and then conversion changes drastically. So it just goes to show that in our mind, we see it as storage, but in the user's mind and the user's eyes, it is seen as sharing. The means are the same, but the end looks slightly different. And to discover something like that, you definitely need to go out and have user conversations. And you're right, what you just said right now about not just holding on. And I also see that if you think about Facebook itself, if it was just about a few things about what our college buddies or classmates did, Facebook wouldn't possibly grow into what it is. And every idea out there that has scaled into something larger has found multiple ways, and the original idea might be the kernel or the seed, but the actual tree is much bigger.
No, definitely, I totally agree on that.
So fantastic, Sanjeev. This has been a great conversation. For someone who's helming such a large company, you're full of humility and honesty, and it comes across. It still feels like you're getting started, and we know that a lot of scale is ahead. We haven't yet seen, the real larger behemoths of social commerce or the larger opportunity. I'm sure you're still scratching the surface, and you still feel the same. I know we'll see Meesho 3.0, 4.0, and Maharajas of Scale will be there to talk to you and see what that vantage point looks like. Any closing comments before we sign off?
No, I think that's it. Hoping people get something out of it, and I just hope people have enough learnings to apply. Thank you.
Wonderful, Sanjeev. You have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this story. If this story made a difference to you, tell us by leaving a comment on the website or our social media channels. Help us spread the love by subscribing, liking, and sharing our show. We welcome speaker suggestions and collaboration. Write to me at tanya@maharajasofscale.com.